Hey everybody, welcome back to the Ivy Cove Furniture. Heidi here. Thank you all for coming back to my channel. If you haven't already, go ahead and hit that subscribe button so you can see all my upcoming videos. So today's going to be a really awesome video. I have a list of tips, tricks, and advice to share with you guys on how to paint furniture and successfully sell it on Marketplace and earn an actual income by doing so. So if that sounds like something that interests you, then hang out and watch this fun video because I'm going to share with you everything I know and have learned over the past year and a half in order to successfully grow your furniture painting business on Marketplace. The basis of all of my tips and advice come from me as a single mom, trying to make a living and actually ending up making a living. When I started painting, I was working 3 jobs. And because of how well I was able to grow my business by just following some simple rules, some advice that was given to me by other people in the field, and just basic rules that I started creating as I went, I've really been able to move my business from a small little, earning a couple extra dollars on the side to it is my sole business. I don't do anything other than paint and sell furniture now. So all of my tips are coming from what I have learned by my experience over the last year and a half. My first tip is know your market. I know that this sounds like kind of irrelevant, but it's really important to know what you're working with. And by knowing your market, you're going to know what kind of people are going to want to buy your furniture. You're going to know how much competition is in the area and what kind of people you have to compete with. And you're also going to know what you can price your furniture at and actually make money. So as you guys know, furniture painting is a huge deal and it's a large market in most areas. Where I live, I'm in Florida and I live in Brevard County, and it's a huge county and there are so many other furniture painters and there are several very talented furniture painters. So when I first started out, everything was white, shabby chic, farmhouse, and I started out painting that way. And I quickly realized every other person was painting the same way. So my pieces were not competitive. I was selling the exact same thing that everybody else was selling. So I couldn't price a dresser for more than $200 because I was trying to sell the same thing that somebody else was selling. So when there are multiple pieces that look very similar on the market at the same time, people are going to go towards the lowest priced piece. So if you have a dresser that's marked at $250 and your competitor has a dresser that's very similar and it's marked at $225, guess who's going to sell their dresser? So my first tip is just to know your market, know your area, know who else is around you selling, know what they're painting. If somebody is painting a lot of farmhouse, maybe you shouldn't do so much farmhouse. If somebody's painting a lot of modern, maybe you could try a different type of style. If somebody is painting a ton of beachy, then you know that there's a person in town who already paints that way and they probably have a following. That's my experience. There are people in town who are specifically farmhouse painters, that are specifically coastal beachy painters. I live right on the beach, so we actually get a lot of that. So when I started out, I realized that early on, thankfully, and I actually started painting black. And that was kind of the turn. That was before black pieces were really popular, but I decided I needed to do something different. And I painted one piece black and it sold at a higher price than any other piece I had ever sold. And at that time, it was this huge, beautiful bow front buffet. It was like 38 inches high. It was a massive piece. And it sold for $300, which is nothing for a dresser if you really think about it. But at the time, in the market, that's what it went for. So my first piece of advice is just to know your market. My second tip is have a set price chart for buying and selling. This is going to keep you from overspending. When you're starting out and you're trying to earn as much money as possible, if you're somebody who's just doing this as a hobby and you don't really need the extra money, this tip really isn't for you. But if you're somebody who's on a budget like I was when I started painting, this is the best piece of advice that I could give you. Have a set price. So at the time I started painting, $50 would have been like a maximum for a dresser. Now I'm willing to spend, closer to 75. I try to stay between 60 and 70 for a good dresser, but I'm willing to pay more if I know it's going to give me a good profit in the end, and especially if it's a piece that doesn't need a lot of work. You have to consider, if you go out and buy a dresser for $100 and then you put another, $20, $30 to $40 into paint and supplies, and then on top of that, you have gas because you went and picked up the dresser, and you have all of the time that you spent painting that dresser. And then you turn around and you try to sell it for $200 or $250. It's not worth your time. That is not something that's worth your time. Even to sell it at $300, it wouldn't be worth my time. When I first started out, I was a beginner painter. I was painting like a beginner painter. I didn't really know what I was doing. My goal was to just paint something, make $100 on it, and try to sell like 400 products a week. Four products a week and make $400. When I first started painting, this was maybe 3 years ago. Now, like I said, it's not worth my time unless I can make at least $250. Now, I don't always make that, but my intention is always to make that. So unless I genuinely feel that this is what the product is worth, then I don't want the product. I paint a lot of dressers and larger items because larger items are the biggest money makers, and dressers are pretty easy to paint, I think, especially if they're clean and they don't need a lot of work, which brings me into my third tip, which is never put more work than you need to into a piece. When you're starting out, when you're a beginner and you're just trying to make money, as you evolve and you progress and people start to follow you, people start to recognize that you have talent and skill, then you can start getting really crafty with your pieces. You can start, raising your prices and changing the hardware and adding new legs and, doing all these crazy things. But when you're a beginner, unless you just really want to do that, I don't recommend it. This is one thing that I really followed and stuck to when I very first started painting. I would not buy anything if it had a broken drawer. I won't buy a piece of furniture if it was missing hardware because I didn't want to have to buy hardware. So if it didn't have all the hardware, if there was a drawer track that was missing or a drawer was broken, I wouldn't buy it because that's additional time and supplies that I would have to go and spend more money to buy a new track or fix this, leg or something like that, or buy all new hardware because you can't just replace one piece of hardware. A lot of times on these older dressers, you can't find the original hardware, so you have to buy all new hardware. So it wasn't worth it to me to have to do that. If something was covered in latex paint, that was a huge no-no for me because latex takes forever to get off. So one of the biggest things for me was just never put more work into something than you need to. Even if I found something that was, sitting on the side of the street and it needed all new hardware and new legs and, a new drawer track or something like that, it would not be worth my time to do it because I could literally go find a beautiful brand new condition dresser for, $50 or $60 and completely paint it, redo it, everything, and it would take a fraction of the turnaround time in order to do that. And for me, somebody who was, constantly painting and selling, that is worth my time more than a free piece of furniture that needed way too much work. My next tip is start out simple. You don't have to go crazy with your painting when you're, a beginner painter, or if you're just trying to make money on Marketplace. Honestly, the first year I got big, I painted a lot of gray pieces, a lot of black pieces. I did a lot of mixed toned grays or like offset grays. dimensional pieces, but I always stuck with the same general color scheme. I would always spray paint my hardware the same color, and I would always try to make my pieces cohesive. That way, if somebody wanted, a dresser and they wanted nightstands to go with it, I would know, well, I have nightstands and you can definitely mix and match. And a lot of times I would sell dressers and nightstands together, or, multiple pieces, because I would try to keep my pieces all very cohesive. So start out simple, do solid colors, don't replace your hardware, just freshen up your hardware with some spray paint or, something funky, but you don't have to go crazy. You don't have to spend, 12 hours painting a piece. It would take me on average about 2 hours or 3 hours to get a piece completed before cure time. So that's a pretty good turnover. And I would suggest, trying to do simple, neutral colors always sell better than eclectic pieces. Anytime you do something that's funky or crazy, it definitely limits who is going to buy that piece, because it would take a special person to either fall in love with that piece or to have those colors in their home. So neutral colors will always sell better, faster. Grays, blacks, whites, tans, natural woods, things like that. My next rule of advice is something that I learned much later in the game. When I first started out, I was such a rookie, and I would just finish a piece and take a picture of it, and then I would put it up on Marketplace, and it wouldn't be staged. It would just be a random picture, and it would not be very appealing. So something that I have really learned over this past year especially, and I am still learning, I've used the Photoshop Express, which is an app on your phone, and I just learned that there are additional filters you can buy, and you do have to pay for the app and some of the filters, but 100% worth it. Staging your photos is such a huge deal, because when you're scrolling through Marketplace, you're seeing so much random stuff that when you see something that is truly eye-catching, you're going to want to click on that. So make sure that you have your photos staged up against a nice background, a solid wall, a backdrop. Make sure you have, you don't have to go crazy with your staging. I usually just try to do like some simple stuff, and I actually have just recently been learning how to properly stage my pieces, and it has definitely helped my sales. I can't even tell you how many people have told me in the past couple months that they love my staging. My photos look so professional, and I'm using my phone to do all of my work. I use my phone to make my YouTube videos. I use my phone to do my work videos, all of my photos, everything. So staging is such a huge thing. When you're using filters, I never try to use a filter that alters the color of my piece too much, because I want it to look as legit as possible and as real as possible. And I want the color to be as accurate as possible, so that when they come to see the piece, they're not seeing something online that's like, wow, whoa, and then they get there and it's disappointing. So I always I do brighten my photos quite a bit, and I'll use filters, but I usually will lower the opacity on the filters so that they're not like crazy, just out of this world looking, and that they do still have a little bit of, that natural color to them, to where they look somewhat like what they're going to look like when you see it in person. So staging is a huge thing. And item descriptions. Make sure you have in your descriptions if there's any damage, anything that can sell your piece for you. Put in words like beautiful and stunning and gorgeous and if it's a large dresser, and make sure you always have your dimensions listed, the amount of drawers, if there's hidden drawers. You want pictures of everything. I do close-ups of the hardware, the legs, I do the tops of my piece, the sides of my piece, the front of my piece. So I will pop in some photos here at the end and show you guys some of my favorite staged pieces. But staging is a huge thing, and I didn't realize this until just recently. I've always been staging my pieces well, but it really took it to a whole nother level. So let me know if you guys found my tips and advice helpful or not, or if you guys have any more questions, please definitely let me know in the comments, and I will try to answer you back in a timely manner. I really abide by all of my rules, and to each their own. Everybody has a different process, but these are just simple guidelines that I have found to be very useful, especially the never doing more work than you have to. I think that's probably been my number one when it came to growing my business. And now that my business is, pretty established in the area that I live in, I've been able to kind of take it to a whole nother level, and I can start doing some of these funner colors and, fun techniques and changing the hardware and adding the legs and putting a little bit more money into my pieces, because now at this point I'm getting, more like double the amount of what I was getting when I first started out. So it'll happen. You just have to be persistent, and you have to really know your value, know your worth, and trust in your skills. Don't be discouraged if you don't sell something for a week or even 2 weeks and you don't get any likes on it. Marketplace can be tricky, but don't give up and just keep on pushing. Definitely let me know if you guys enjoyed this video. And these are this is my recents in staging, and I love the way all these photos turned out. So again, I hope you found all of my advice helpful, and if you have any questions, please let me know. Also, if you haven't already, please like this video and hit the subscribe button so you can see all my future videos.